Hello everyone, I'm Greg Otto here with FedScoop TV, and we're at the Security Through Innovation Summit today, and I'm here with Dave Egts, the Chief Technologist for Red Hat's Public Sector. Dave, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, Greg.
So, to start off, talk to me about what you see as the #1 disruptor when it comes to security challenges for the federal government.
Yeah, so I think the #1 disruptor that I see going on is in cloud computing.
Okay.
And people could see it as a positive or a negative, or actually both, depending upon the vantage point you look at. Because if you look at the IT consumer, they have expectations that they've seen from working on the personal side of having this instant gratification of, hey, I want to spin up a virtual machine, and and then they go back to their IT organization and say, why can't you offer the same speed and agility that I can get from just pulling out my credit card and going to a public cloud provider? Mm-hmm. And so that really puts the IT organizations under pressure to respond to that level of expectations. But the good news is that for a lot of customers, they can easily address those needs. And two ways that they could do it. One is by using open hybrid cloud technologies. Okay. So at Red Hat, we have a thing called Red Hat Cloud Forms. So what it does is it provides a self-service portal for customers for IT end users to go into. They could log in, and in the same way that they go directly to a cloud provider to spin up a VM, they could go through their corporate IT's infrastructure, and then once they're logged in, they want to request spinning up a virtual machine. You can embed all the business logic, all the business rules into where you want to spin it up. So I want to do it on my virtualized infrastructure, or I want to use a public cloud. You could do that. But the benefit there is that allows them to be responsive without having to, it allows them to be responsive, but also allows them to take advantage of the cloud technologies that are out there, but also in a governed and secure sort of way. The second way that they could do it is by using platform as a service. So,
okay.
Yeah, so at Red Hat we have Red Hat OpenShift Enterprise.
Okay.
Okay. And so in the past, if somebody wanted to stand up an application, say like on a public cloud provider, they pull out their credit card, they spin up a VM, they load the software on the stack, and a couple hours later, they can start writing their application. Whereas with something like a platform as a service, with OpenShift Enterprise, you can go from standing up a virtual machine in minutes to actually standing up an application inside of a container in a matter of seconds. So this, again, helps enterprises really respond to that level of expectation that the IT users have of that instant gratification. But the benefit is that it's done in a controlled way with governance. It's by the IT organization according to their policy.
So a lot of that and a lot of the things that you talk about, that's all, the great possibilities and innovations that you can have on the cloud. But the federal agencies sometimes are still a little slow to adapt to it. So what are one or two pieces of advice that you have for somebody out there that has a little trepidation about going to the cloud because of security, but still wants to kind of dip their toes in the water?
Yeah. So you can imagine these same IT organizations that are getting beat up that you're not fast enough, and then you tell them that I want you to embrace the public cloud. They look at it as, well, geez, now I have more work to do, and barely have enough time to keep the lights on. With the applications I have going on now. Now you want me to replicate what I'm doing in my private data center using cloud technologies, and for them it's like too much. And so going back to the CloudForms example, CloudForms is another way that people could take advantage of an open hybrid cloud.
Okay.
And think about that same example that we went through where I log into the CloudForms portal and I want to request a virtual machine. Well, I could set up the business rules to pick my virtualized infrastructure that I have in-house, and I could use that. But depending upon how, maybe the cost of the virtual machine in my data center versus the public cloud, maybe the public cloud is cheaper, or the workload has less of a security profile, and I could put it out on the public cloud. The business rules would enable you to do that. For a lot of customers that have they standardized on virtualization, and they have developed all of their workflows assuming that they only live in a virtual world. Extending to the private cloud is too much for them because they have to replicate all of that technology. But by using something like CloudForms, they could take the technology up a level.
Okay.
So instead of doing everything for a virtualized infrastructure, they define it at a higher level, and down the road, they could plug in different cloud providers over time, and that would help them accelerate their adoption of the cloud. But again, using the governance and security that they define and they have control over.
So switching gears to cybersecurity, cyber attacks, not going away.
Yeah.
The lines are blurring, between nation states, black hat hackers, organized crime. What worries you the most on this front? And should the solutions be more policy-based, or should they just be technological innovations? Where do you see the kind of balance there?
Yeah, well, I think it should be both. The biggest thing that just keeps me up at night is whenever, you look at all the attacks from 2014, a lot of that was due to people running unpatched systems.
Right, okay.
Right, or they're running software that has been out of date. We've seen that in the financial services industry. We've seen it in retail, where people think that, that it's like, oh, well, it's not connected to the internet directly, so I don't need to patch it. And stuff like that just drives me crazy. Especially as somebody who has a bank account and credit card and all that. It's like it's amazing. And so, and it's not something that is an open source versus proprietary sort of thing. If it's a proprietary vendor, once they declare end of life of a product, you're sort of out of luck. Right. The only place that you're going to be getting those updates from is from that vendor, and if they're not providing it, sorry, you got to move on. With open source, it's less dire, right?
Okay.
So because it's the code is out there.
Right.
Anybody could they could update it if you want. But the reality is though is that regardless, you have to have a support plan in place. So you have to decide that, okay, am I going to support this myself, where I'm going to have people on my payroll that are doing the security updates, and I'm taking them away from the mission to actually do the patching and fixing the code themselves that may be only useful within that agency. Or would it be better to take advantage of the economies of scale by going with a commercial provider of that software that is open source? And we found customers doing that, and you could do it for a fraction of the cost than you would if you would roll it yourself. Because the benefit there is, like at Red Hat, we have tens of thousands of customers that are using the exact same code base. So in a lot of cases, we actually are fixing problems before another customer finds out that there is a problem, and they get to fix before they realize it. So it's a really good story there. But the bottom line is that if you're using unsupported software, or if you're using software, regardless, you need to have a support plan, and you're going to be paying for it whether you staff it yourself or you have a vendor do it.
So finally, from a cybersecurity leadership standpoint, talk to me about what you're seeing from a human capital perspective and a workforce perspective. Do we have the right people and enough people in place to keep the federal government systems protected and resilient in the face of attacks?
Yeah, and so, well, I'm really optimistic.
Okay.
So I don't see this as like this is all on public shoulders or public sector shoulders. I think this is something that the private industry and the public sector should work together to work on. Whenever I've seen, we talked about the attacks that have happened in the commercial sector, I think that was a wake-up call to a lot of companies that to take security seriously. And so it's, a lot of times, me being the optimist, whenever you're faced with adversity, what are the things that we learn from this and how do we prevent that from happening again? But looking at the public sector, I think public sector has been doing a great job working with industry. For instance, at Red Hat, we've been working with the NSA since 1999 on SE Linux. By baking that into the Linux operating system and to have a security hardened operating system. There's the work that we've been doing over the past couple of years with the SCAP security guide, which is it's DISA, NIST, NSA, and about 24 other agencies are working together with Red Hat and other folks from industry to develop the right way to do security policy. So instead of having each agency doing a different lockdown policy, let's come up with one and let's get all the great ideas and put them together. So that's been working really well. And then, so as we've been working on those things, we you see the breaches happening in the commercial sector, and my counterparts on the commercial team, they would always tell me that, oh yeah, well, to them, to their customers, a lot of times security is an afterthought, even though, and now it's not. And what's really encouraging to me is those customers are coming to my counterparts saying that, hey, I hear that Red Hat is doing really good things with the government in order to help keep their systems secure. Can we take advantage of that too? And so I think that's really encouraging. But looking out into the future, it gets even better. So it turns into this virtuous cycle where, in the same way we were working with the federal government to do the right security policies and right postures and everything, we are working with the commercial industry for things like PCI compliance and things like that. And all the great ideas that are in the commercial organization are going to come back full circle to benefit the government systems,
right.
To make them even more secure too. So that, to me, it makes me really optimistic for the future.
An optimistic cybersecurity is hard to come by. Dave, thanks for taking some time out to talk to us today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
You can visit all of our videos on our YouTube channel, and for more, check out FedScoop.com. I'm Greg Otto. Thanks for watching.